So I watched this movie during the day and I did my review for this at night, so I guess you can say it took me all day and a night to make this. All Day and a Night stars Ashton Sanders as Jakhor, who's in prison after committing a murder, where he's reunited with his abusive father JD, played by Jeffrey Wright. As he adjusts to life in prison, not only does he work on his relationship with his father, but he looks back on his life and reflects on what led him to this point. This movie opens up with a brutal scene of Jakhor murdering a man and his girlfriend in front of their daughter, and my mouth dropped when I saw that. It is gruesome and it sets the tone for the rest of this movie. It tells us we're in for a grim experience. This touches on themes that are addressing issues that have been prevalent for, well, centuries. It examines the broken system that so many people face that leads to economic inequality and mass incarceration. And it also shows us that so many people, despite doing what they can to pull themselves out of a dire situation, can't truly find a way out just because the system actively works against them. This movie's written and directed by Joe Robert Cole, who also co-wrote Black Panther. And something great that he did in that movie was take a villain and show us exactly what made him the way he is. So in that movie, we don't condone what the villain does, but we can at least see where he comes from, and it makes him more compelling. And he does something similar here, although this time not with a villain, but with a protagonist who just does something awful. He opens up the movie with this horrible act of Jakhor killing these two people, and then spends the rest of the movie examining what led to this point, and it makes him more sympathetic. And in that respect, he succeeds, and that's also thanks to a great lead performance by Ashton Sanders. He carries this movie. I thought he really conveyed well the struggle that Jakhor faces trying to put his life together, only to be beaten down every which way he goes. Even when he's working in a shoe store, there's one scene where he's literally just picking up boxes of shoes to clean them up, and a white woman walks in and suspiciously asks him, "What are you doing?" And she leaves when he says that he's working there. It's a very frustrating moment, especially for how bluntly it reflects reality. Like, I got angry watching that because I really felt for him, and I can only imagine how so many people feel when they're in a situation like that in real life. The supporting cast is also fine for the most part. Jeffrey Wright is pretty good here as Jakhor's father, and after Jakhor himself, he's probably the second most complex character in this movie. He's abusive and antagonistic, and Jakhor goes down a very similar path to his. But he tries amending that relationship with his son when they see each other again in prison, and Wright does a solid job with the material. I also particularly enjoyed Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as a gangster who Jakhor works for named Big Stunna. This guy is by far one of the most ruthless characters here. Mateen is a very reliable actor, and he conveys well just how menacing this guy is. And he's always been great. I particularly enjoyed him as Black Manta in Aquaman, and he was also very good in an episode of Black Mirror. And just like with those performances, his acting here is mesmerizing. All that being said, I actually had a few major issues with this movie. Despite the themes and the performances, it felt difficult to stay invested. It cuts back and forth between Jakhor's time in prison and before that. And I'm always fine with non-linear storytelling. I love it, but here it's easy to get lost for multiple reasons. A lot of the material that we see before Jakhor commits these murders, when we cut back to that, it feels all over the place. It makes a lot of time jumps between Jakhor as a child and Jakhor as an adult. And it'll jump around between days, weeks, months later in both those respective time periods. And it feels very blink and you miss it to understand exactly where you are. Another thing is that this is filled with a lot of narration. And said narration is accompanied by long shots of characters deep in thought, or they're just sitting around. And to be honest, I'm not really the biggest fan of narration in films. There are a few exceptions if they're done right. But in this case, I think it dragged this movie's runtime out with monologues that ran on way too long. Like, the narration does hit some important notes, such as being stuck in this broken system, but it does a lot of explaining, and it could have condensed a few things to show us what it was trying to say. I mean, the whole point of film is show, don't tell. And when you have so many scenes of narration telling us so much, on top of it being a very dreary movie to begin with, it makes the pacing feel sluggish, and I can see people losing interest over this. On top of that, there are a lot of supporting characters who are introduced to, some not until halfway through the movie. And again, I felt like I was missing something. Maybe it was just because I wasn't as invested by that point, but there were a lot of characters, and there were times where it felt like their connections to one another weren't made abundantly clear. Mainly anyone involved with the scenes of Jakhor working for Big Stunner. Now, maybe they were established and I just didn't realize it. But again, a lot of this results from the fact that this is not a very active movie. It just tells you a lot. And I'm not saying a movie needs to be action-packed, but had it cut down on some of the excessive narration and made some of the time jumps a little clearer, I think that would have helped things out big time. This movie hits some great themes. It provides a look into a broken, unjust system that a lot of people have a difficult time escaping no matter how hard they try. Plus it does have some impressive performances, mainly from Ashton Sanders, who's great here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has coming up next. Though, unfortunately, I think this would have benefited had it not relied so much on narration, and its non-linear storytelling leads to some confusing time jumps and character relationships that aren't clearly established. This starts off great, but it loses a lot of steam as it goes on, and by the end, I honestly wasn't as invested. All Day and a Night gets a 5.5 out of 10. If you want to check it out, it's on Netflix. I would like to see more movies address themes such as this. They're all very relevant. And there are some really noteworthy qualities here, but the storytelling, for me, brought a lot of this down. But hey, maybe you'll have a different experience. But let me know, did you see All Day and a Night, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you enjoy the performances? Did you like the themes that it addressed here? And what's one of your favorite movies with social commentary? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and give it a share, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll catch you next time.